This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there, welcome to this edition of Global Business Africa. In the course of the hour, we'll run through all the business news stories you need to know about from Africa and beyond. So let's start with a quick run through the markets here for you. We're going to be talking about aviation in a moment. SAA specifically, management says it will resume flights to 6 countries on the continent this week: Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia, Mozambique, Namibia and Zimbabwe. Most of its operations, however, still entirely grounded. No resolution in sight of that dispute between management and the unions. Main indices in Nigeria and Ghana, they're the worst performance in the set, down 14.8% and 12.5% respectively. Egypt and South Africa, though, they have the biggest gain so far this year, up over 10% and 7.7% respectively. Here's what's coming up tonight. The World Exports Development Forum kicks off in Ethiopia's capital, Addis Ababa. Emirates Airlines announces a $16 billion deal with Airbus at the Dubai Air Show. And we'll explore why indoor farming is becoming increasingly popular in Africa's largest oil producer. All that and more is in the pipeline for you tonight. But our starting point this hour is Ethiopia, where the annual World Exports Development Forum is going to be kicking off this week in the capital, Addis Ababa. Over 1,000 participants from business leaders to policymakers will be attending this year's event. The forum is focused on helping businesses, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, make the most of the newly ratified African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Right, then let's dig a little deeper into what exactly you should expect this week. CGTN's Hannah Viviers is over in Addis Ababa. Hannah, what more can you tell us about what you should expect from this year's edition of the Export Forum?
Thank you so much, Ramah. Well, a lot of delegates started arriving yesterday already, and today a lot of them coming in. But we're going to really see this event start to take off on Wednesday, actually, and that's going to be the official opening of WEDA for 2019. Tomorrow is going to be She Trades Global, which is an amazing conference that's going to focus particularly on women entrepreneurs on the continent and how they can be introduced to other markets, particularly the export market. And I have with us today Ms. Dorothy Tembo. She's Deputy Executive Director at the International Trade Center, and she's going to be speaking to us a little bit more about what we can expect and also just some of the success stories that WEDA has had over the 19 editions that it's gone through so far. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Tembo. Just speak to us about some of the highlights that we can expect in this week of WEDA.
Thank you very much for having me. I think the first highlight for me is the very fact that we are here in Addis, joining the rest of the continent, pushing forward the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, a decision which was taken only a few months ago in 2018. And therefore, all the activities that we are bringing together and contributing to the events of the week are really ones that are focusing on supporting business entrepreneurs in the continent to push forward and try to take advantage of the opportunities that would be created out of the free trade area.
With WEDA's emphasis this year on the African Free Continental Trade Area, that is a huge focus. It's coming in line also with this week's African Industrialization Week that is being led by the EU. What could come out of this particular forum in 2019 that could encourage that process of that free trade area on the African continent?
What we're doing as an organization is working with the small, medium enterprises to try and ensure that they can really add value to their production and be able to export within the region and beyond. So basically what we do is we work with these companies to make them aware of what is available, but also supporting the different elements that will facilitate trade amongst the different countries and beyond, but also try to ensure that we work with them in very practical ways. So what is it that we are bringing here? We have, for instance, what you referred to, the She Trades Global, which deals mainly with women empowerment And we have been spending the last 2 days for the very first time working with 40 women business associations, making them aware of what commitments the different governments have made with respect to the Continental Free Trade Area and how these can be translated operationally. Part of what we have discovered is that we need to find a mechanism that enables them to work together collectively to make sure that the needs of women are actually taken into account. In a way, for me, that is really a practical way of getting the women to be involved, which is an excellent development in the context of the Continental Free Trade Area. For the first time, you're seeing the aspect of inclusion really trying to start being realized.
Let's speak a little bit about some of the practical steps that the International Trade Center, which is leading this WEDF and has been leading WEDF for the past 19 editions that this has been going on, just some of the practical steps that the organization takes in allowing businesses and all the players that are in this space to be able to access those export markets. Some of the stories that I've been hearing are really incredible. One of them was those Kenya producers that were making about 3 shillings per avo that they were selling, and then when the ITC started to work with them, it almost quadrupled, and some of them, in some cases, even more than quadrupled their earnings. So just speak to us about some of the practical steps that the ITC is taking to be able to facilitate that process.
Very true what you say, and this is really what we are about. And I think what I would want to say to you is that what we do within the context of WEDF is one that contributes to the holistic pieces of work that we undertake as an entity, and obviously doing this in collaboration with others. The specific case you have given is avocado, but we have numerous cases where we are working with different countries in different sectors to add value to what is being produced. So we will do different things from the production side, labeling, and we will work with them on issues of certification to ensure that they meet the standards to be able to export to the different markets within Africa and beyond, Europe, Asia, and all other places. This is something that we have done in the context of projects in the honey sector, where we're working with rural women to help them produce the honey and consolidate the quantities for onward consolidation at the country level for export to other countries. A specific case in point was in Zambia, where we worked with women in Northwestern Province, and these women, through the support that we were providing, are now able to export to one of the biggest Italian producers of buyers of honey, and they have a market that up to this point still has potential to even grow more. What the government has done in this particular case is now wanting to replicate that to other provinces so that the quantities can actually be increased. We also have here in Ethiopia, where we have brought investment from India into Ethiopia, into the textiles and clothing sector, a factory being opened, employing 1,000 women, employing 1,000 workers, but mostly women. So these are some of the examples that I can give, and this is really what we're about, making it happen, making that transaction happen. Part of what we'll be doing on the second day of WEDF is bringing together the businesses to speak to each other and agree as to what transactions can be conducted. What we will do as an entity is to work with them to make sure that that lead is realized as a transaction and that there is income generated.
You've spoken a lot about women in business, but also there's a huge focus on youth and youth entrepreneurship. There's going to be the pitching session where we're going to see those 5 finalists who are going to have an opportunity to pitch their ideas to jury members, and the winner is going to win that $5,000. And that's just one example of some of what's going to be happening in terms of just empowering the youth in the entrepreneurship space, that they have not only the funding but also the skills that they need to be able to make their ventures a success. Could you just speak to us about that and just going forward what you see happening?
This is the 3rd year actually that we are having the youth segment, and very clearly this year it has grown much more than when we started. Last year when we were in Lusaka, we did have the pitching exercise, and the year before when we were in Budapest, the same had happened. if I am by way of trying to share with you, Budapest, the winner, had an initial token price of $5,000. Within the few months leading to Lusaka, he had an investment level of $500,000 being put into his initiative. So this really we see as being catalytic. It's a critical part of what has to happen in this continent, and I think the interest it has generated from the youth, it's huge. What we have found is youth are very, very innovative. They're trying to find ways and means of how they can sustain themselves outside the formal employment channels. So the entrepreneurship side of things is something that we have really been working on increasingly in from our perspective. We do have some other projects, such as in the Gambia, where we have the youth employment project. It was started in the context of the migration issues, trying to contain the migration to Europe and trying to give the youth skills that will enable them generate some kind of income and be able to keep them within the country. But what has happened actually is that we have realized that the approach we have taken in that particular instance is one that is replicable in other countries and very much one that has been in demand. And we are certainly looking at growing this area. Certainly an aspect that is a part of the African Continental Free Trade Area. All countries, political level and otherwise, are focusing on how they need to address the aspects relating to youth, because we know when youth become idle, it can also be a potential for problems in the future. So all of them are trying to find solutions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tambo. Ms. Dorothy Tambo is speaking to us.
2 years, the longest in the Middle East and North Africa.
This reflects the strong confidence in the Egyptian economy and a good forecast for the next 40 years, which is unprecedented here. But this is supported by strong numbers such as drop in inflation, the gradual strengthening of the Egyptian pound, as well as high economic growth levels. Also, the interest rates are very attractive compared to Europe, where it could reach 0% in some cases.
This is the third bond release.
For Egyptians, part of the funds will also go into covering the expenses in the state budget to reduce deficit.
All right, then a quick run through some corporate headlines for you. Starting in South Africa, the MTN Group has signed an expanded roaming and services agreement with the country's third largest carrier, Cell C. The latest deal will see an existing agreement between the two operators expanded nationwide. It will also bring some relief to Cell C's high-cost burden of building out its entire network. Elsewhere in East Africa, Kenya's largest telecoms operator, Safaricom, plans to make a joint bid with South Africa's Vodacom for one of two Ethiopian telecoms licenses that are coming to market next year. The NSE-listed firm has been given the go-ahead by Ethiopia's government to either buy a stake in the name's telco that's up for sale, that's Ethio Telecom, or start operations as a new company altogether. In the tech world, the PC and printer maker HP, Hewlett-Packard, has rejected a $33 billion takeover offer from Xerox. Earlier this month, Xerox offered to spend some $22 per share to acquire HP, but according to HP's board, that proposal would significantly undervalue the company. HP instead says it's now interested in discussing a deal to combine with its much smaller rival. And finally, the automaker Nissan has recalled roughly 400,000 of its most popular vehicles in the United States. This comes after the Japanese manufacturer admitted a brake fluid leak could actually cause the cars to catch fire. The firm has urged owners to park their vehicles outdoors and away from structures until this problem has been fixed. Nissan, however, is working to fix the issue. It says that owners of the affected cars will be notified early in December. That's a run for your company headlines. You're watching Global Business Africa. Time for a short break. Here's what's coming up next. South African Airways will resume some regional flights even as it suffers from a crippling strike. And food prices have pushed up Nigeria's annual inflation rate to over 11.6%.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global business. Only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Naro.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Welcome back to the program. South African Airways, the embattled national carrier, says it will resume flights to at least 6 African destinations, but it will cancel some domestic flights in the next 2 days. The state-owned but loss-making carrier cancelled hundreds of flights since the strike started last week Friday. This industrial action is costing the airline over $3.3 million a day, and it's effectively jeopardized talks with its lenders. The strike has also cast doubt on the very survival of this airline, which has not reported a profit since 2011, as reliant on taxpayer bailouts in order to survive. So then, what exactly ails South African Airways? It used to be, at one point in time, Africa's largest airline, but it's now bleeding vast amounts of cash every day. Let's find out. Keith Lockwood is an economist, is an adjunct faculty member at the Gordon Institute of Business Science. Keith, good to meet you here. So, going by the last audited accounts, these are from 2017. The airline, at least on paper, seems to have some rather decent numbers. The passenger load factor, for instance, is enviable, over 70%. That's higher than the average in Africa, the Middle East, in some instances even North America. So why isn't this carrier making money?
Good evening. Well, I think the biggest problem really has been poor leadership of the airline itself, within a context of poor leadership of the country. So we've had declining economic growth. Incomes have been declining in real terms for the last 5 years, and travel spending is often one of the first things to be cut. And then on top of that, SAA has not managed to adjust to that environment as it should, so leadership hasn't ensured the sustainability of the enterprise going forward.
In many respects, the Auditor General in the 2017 annual report kept on pointing out that he could not ascertain if the assets that management said were on the books actually existed or of the value that management said they were. And it does make for really painful reading. Do we actually know what the true financial position of SAA really is?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. Certainly the last published financial statements were the 2016-2017 figures you've referred to. We've had some reports in Parliament referring to continued high losses at the airline, but we haven't really seen any of the detail that will enable us to make a good assessment of its financial position.
Is there any specific reason why those reports have not been made public, especially for the last 2 fiscal years?
Well, you've got an institution that's in a state of flux with changing leadership, varying board structures, new plans for turning it around coming to the fore. And I suspect that they've had their eye on other issues, but I also think they probably didn't want to provide that detail publicly at this stage.
Right, so this carrier does report revenues of roughly 30 billion rand every single year. Here we see management saying, we'll offer you a 5.9% pay hike in April. The workers want an 8% pay hike. But given its losses, can this carrier even afford to offer these wage increases?
There has to be a cost somewhere in terms of what or where that increase is felt somewhere else. If you look at the cost breakdown of SAA in 2017, then staff costs had already increased up to around 19%. A decade earlier, they were sitting at around 13%. So they have gone up quite substantially, and so have staff numbers. But although the load factor is relatively good, as you pointed out earlier, the real challenge is that the total available seat kilometers has actually dropped from about 34 billion seat kilometers to just under 32 billion. So there's a scale issue involved. And in addition to that, then I think there are other cost factors, poor leadership, corruption, etc., that have imposed additional costs on the airline.
Let's remove the leadership element out of the equation as well. But in your assessment, does SAA have a productivity problem as well?
That's certainly the inference that you can draw from the increasing staff numbers and declining passenger numbers. So I know that measuring productivity is a little bit more complicated than that, but in the context of the airline and available data, certainly productivity is low, and the staff costs have been climbing, even though they're not necessarily outrageous and way out of line of comparable airlines in South Africa.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Keith Lockwood, thank you very much for your input this evening. Now then, let's move on to something a little different in North Africa. The International Auto and Automotive Tech Exhibition opened this week in Tunisia. Many Chinese car makers are exhibiting the latest models for the Tunisian market. CGTN's Anin Chouachi is there.
The event is organized by the Tunis International Fairs Company in partnership with the Tunisian Automotive Association and the Technical Center for Mechanical and Electrical Industries and the Ministry of Industry.
Chinese automakers are the guests of this special edition. Chinese cars are sold everywhere around the globe because they are safe and use the latest technology.
Many consumers have booked their Chinese cars from local dealers. Tunisians have cited compelling reasons for opting for made-in-China auto brands.
I have bought a Chinese car from the fair. There's no difference between German, French and Chinese cars in terms of safety and comfort. The made in China is a guarantee of international standards, design and quality.
Auto experts assert that Chinese cars are gaining in popularity in the Tunisian and African markets.
The quality of materials, the competitive price, the options, as well as the availability make Chinese cars a good alternative to traditional automakers in the region and the African market.
Tunisia Automotive Exhibition has brought together nearly 90 Tunisian and foreign exhibitors, more than 5,000 professional visitors, including a significant number of international dealers from the Maghreb, Arab, African countries, and China. Chinese car manufacturers have developed several partnership agreements with Tunisian companies to produce and distribute their products. According to the Minister of Industry, Tunisia aims to become a platform for the manufacture and export of Chinese cars. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
On to Nigeria now. Food prices over there have been rising ever since the government implemented a land border closure in August this year. That started out as a partial closure of the border with Benin, but now all trade through its land borders is effectively dead. And from this point, it looks like things are only going to get worse. As CGTN's Beryl Oro now reports, Africa's largest oil producer seems to be grappling with its highest inflation in nearly 18 months.
Naomi Nguher is at the Gaki market in central Abuja city, shopping for her family's monthly supply of rice. Unfortunately, prices here have almost doubled. Previously going for roughly $7, this regular 10 kg bag of rice now costs approximately $13.
I came to buy rice in the market. Usually, I used to buy it for 2,800. That's the small bag, the 10 kg. I buy it for 2,800, 3,000 naira. And it's so unfortunate that I came to the market today and it's quite high. So based on my budget, what I came to the market with, I couldn't afford it. So I had to buy in small quantity.
In August, the Nigerian government implemented a land border closure with its neighbors to crack down on smuggling. However, that move seems to be affecting trade across the region.
Everything now has added a penny or naira or 1,000 upward. Everything in the market. Not one thing. Even salt, the littlest and the commonest commodity, has increased price and is very, very bad. We are going to a place where people will be forced to do what they ought not to do because they have to sustain their living.
Because of demand is higher than supply. That is why the price is going up. And again, about the road also is not good for the truck that bringing the rice to us. At times, some truck will be spent almost like 2 or 3 weeks on the road before they brought the rice.
According to the recent report, Nigeria's inflation rate rose to 11.61% in October. That's the country's highest rate in nearly 18 months. And that's not all. Prices in the West African economy are also set to increase in the coming months, a crisis many here, like Naomi, say is being fueled by the government's unprecedented border closure.
Food items are very, very expensive in the market. They are so costly in the market these days. And then you see that when you go to a store, they'll tell you that because the border is closed, this and that, one excuse to the other. If it's not recession, it's this, border problems and all that. So I've been finding it very difficult to manage the home lately.
To seize the crippling prices, Nigeria, along with neighboring Benin and Niger, have agreed to set up a joint border patrol force. For Naomi and her family, all that remains is to wait and see if that move will ease tomorrow's cost of living. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Now, unfettered, speedy, reliable internet access, and affordable access at that, is still a luxury for many South Africans. But in one part of the country that's set to change, this time for the residents of the Cape Flats. The American tech giant Google has set up over 100 Wi-Fi towers, calling them Google stations, in that city. It's looking to uplift some of the most vulnerable communities in the country. Here's CGTN's Julie Shire with this report.
Data costs are high in South Africa, making it a challenge to stay connected. But some of Cape Town's most vulnerable communities will now have free internet access. Tech giant Google will provide unlimited Wi-Fi to several townships on the Cape Flats. A move it's hoping will uplift many who are unemployed or caught in a web of crime and gangsterism.
connectivity is empowering in more than one way. It allows people to create, to upload content. It allows people to really connect with their friends. It allows people to find a job and other economic opportunity. So we feel it's a fundamental utility that is empowering the entire community when it's present.
More than 100 Google Station hotspots have been set up across the Cape Flats, but navigating the web can be tricky for those who are not familiar with it.
There's actually a range of constraints that people who are just coming online are facing. It could be around devices. Maybe the devices are poor quality or have poor battery life or terrible screens, things like that. So we work with local community leaders to get the word out and help people understand what connectivity can do for them.
There's been a tremendous uptake in 10 other developing countries where the project's been introduced. Nigeria is the only other African country to have the service.
In Nigeria, that we have kind of like a perfect product fit given the constraints of Nigeria as a market. We have learned that, for example, like a huge percentage of people are using services like YouTube only exclusively through a station and not through other means. And that's really the result of that. I mean, consequence of expensive data plan is really forcing people to use free Wi-Fi.
According to the World Bank, internet connectivity can help boost economic growth. It's also a vital tool for small businesses where most of South Africa's new jobs are expected to come from. Google is, however, not talking expansion yet, but hasn't ruled out the possibility of taking this into other communities. Judy Shara, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
It's just after 18:30 GMT. You're watching Global Business. Time for a break. Here's what's coming up next. Emirates has announced a $16 billion deal with Airbus at the Dubai Air Show. We'll have the details. We'll also be looking at the latest data on FDI flows into the Chinese mainland. It's up by over 6%. The data is coming up shortly.
Holding guns. Machine guns from police forces toward the protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
The activity, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Data out of the country. The country's foreign currency reserves.
With a dedicated and diverse team of anchors, CGTN now brings Africa to the palm of your hand.
I'm Penina Karibe in the heart of Nairobi, which is bustling.
From everyday heroes to the continent's most powerful figures, we bring their voices to you.
We haven't changed. And this is something most of us are very excited about.
We bring you news that's changing perspectives.
I'm reporting from Nairobi City Center.
News that brings Africa to the world. CGTN. See the difference. How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
welcome back. Let's run through some stories making your headlines at this hour. Starting in Libya, 7 civilians have been killed in an airstrike on the capital, Tripoli. Several others have been injured. According to a statement from the UN-backed government, the airstrike landed on a biscuit factory. Several foreigners, including Bangladeshi nationals and Egyptians too, are among the casualties. In South Africa, the UK lawmaker Peter Hain has blamed HSBC, the bank, Stand Chart and the Bank of Baroda for enabling corruption and money laundering under the country's former president, Jacob Zuma. While delivering his submission at the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, he also called on the same banks to help in recovering the money which he alleged they helped to launder. Over in Cote d'Ivoire, the vice chair of the Standing Committee of China's National People's Congress, Wu Weihua, has concluded a work 4-day visit to the capital, Abidjan. President Alassane Ouattara hosted the delegation that's keen to strengthen inter-parliamentary relations between the two countries. That's a run through your headlines. All right, then, some business news now. Dubai-based airline Emirates and the Airbus plane maker have signed a purchase agreement for 50 A350-900s. That's worth $16 billion. Delivery starts around May 2023. The carrier currently serves a global network that covers over 150 destinations with 267 mostly large wide-body aircraft. Earlier this year, Emirates announced that it had ordered 30 Airbus A350s and 40 A330neos as part of a huge fleet shake-up. Now, this triggered Airbus to pull the plug on the gigantic A380, a costly plane that airlines have struggled to fill to its capacity of anywhere between 500 to 850 people, depending on how you spec it.
I'm pleased to announce that Emirates will sign a purchase agreement for 50 Airbus XWBs today. This firm, the order worth of $16 billion at a list price, including Rolls-Royce Trent WXB engines, and we are expecting the first Emirates A350 to be delivered in May 2023.
Foreign direct investment into the Chinese mainland expanded by 6.6% year-on-year in the first 10 months of 2019. That's according to the latest data from China's Commerce Ministry. As CGTN's Sun Tianyuan now reports, during the January to October window, total FDI inflow was over $110 billion, up 3% year-on-year.
China hopes to finish 2019 strong in terms of foreign investment after turning in winning numbers for the first 10 months of the year. The nation utilized over 750 billion yuan, or about $110 billion of foreign investment from January to October. It's a 6.6% jump from last year, results that China's Commerce Ministry says were hard-fought, especially in the face of slow global economic growth.
This shows foreign investors' confidence and good expectations in their investments in China, despite a lagging global investment environment this year. We have also received over 1,300 big projects worth more than $50 million each, which is a 5.4% growth year-on-year.
While investment in manufacturing dimmed, the high-tech industries have seen a nearly 40% increase, especially in its service sectors, with a 70% surge. Officials say the ministry has come out with a combo of policies to further encourage foreign investment in the Chinese market.
We are using the introduction of the foreign investment law as an opportunity to push forward the system of protection, encouragement, and management of foreign investment. That way, China can promote development of an open economy to a higher level.
The ministry also rolled out a document by the Chinese State Council to help enterprises and local governments adapt to the foreign investment law. Despite global challenges, the ministry says it's confident about the nation's overall development in attracting and using foreign investment this year, and it says that China will continue to open up and ensure foreign investors' legal interest. Sun Tianyuan, CGTN, Beijing.
Let's shift focus now to South Korea. Authorities over there say that the trade deficit of the country with Japan is approaching a 16-year low. According to recent data, saw also roughly $16.37 billion in trade deficit with Tokyo in the period between January to October. That's a 20% drop compared to last year. The decline has been attributed to Japanese curbs in key South Korean exports, which started earlier in July. In particular, the sales of Japanese car in South Korea have also fallen by more than half. The latest victim now is Japanese beer. CGTN's Jack Barton visited bars, restaurants and supermarkets to gauge whether the brewing issue is full-bodied.
A Korean beer with Australian hops or a Chinese pale lager. Though Japanese beer, once loved by many South Koreans, has been absent here for months.
Suddenly, it was a big drop, and I thought it might recover in a couple of months, but it didn't. It stays that way.
That drop was driven by a Korean consumer boycott of Japanese goods, after Tokyo slapped restrictions on some high-tech exports to South Korea in August. Local tempers got even frothier when Japan then completely removed South Korea from its list of trusted trading partners. The Finance Ministry says less than $5,500 worth of Japanese beer was imported into South Korea in September. Compare that to $7.2 million for the same month last year. Koreans believe Japan's trade curbs are retaliation for a ruling on a long-simmering issue.
Last year, the Supreme Court in Korea ruled that Japanese companies must compensate those forced laborers who worked in the Japanese companies during World War II.
Other products and Japanese-owned chains have also been badly hit by the South Korean boycott. Osaka-based sportswear firm Descente recently cut its net profit outlook by 82%. Japan also used to be a favorite tourist destination for Koreans.
From the Japan's perspective, tourism industry is the hard hit by this dispute.
In yen terms, maybe. But Japanese beer is nowhere to be found at Korea's largest retailer, and sales elsewhere are said to be down 99.9%, though the 0.1% of drinkers are out there.
I understand that, restriction of export of Japan an issue or the boycott movement, but I still love to drink Japanese beer, so it's my choice.
I think things will return to normal as time goes by, and there will be no major impact. Cheers.
The owner of this restaurant is not so optimistic.
Now I'm also trying to switch to another beer, and it will be replaced soon.
Though the signs will remain up, just in case diplomacy begins to ferment into something both countries want to consume. Jack Barton, CGTN, Daegu in South Korea.
Now, Indonesia and China share an interest in folklore, and the toy company is documenting all of it. The company Good Guys Never Win creates unique figurines for collectors around the world, but the most popular markets for it are in Indonesia and China. GTN's Salkina Alwalia reports from Jakarta.
Superheroes, politicians, and vampires. Toy maker Good Guys Never Win has it all. Their unusual range of toy figurines has been a favorite of collectors for many years. The company was founded 14 years ago, and so far they have developed hundreds of unique toys. But its best-selling series is a collection of Asian ghosts, which are especially popular in the Chinese toy market.
This is a variant. Our series called Setan Lokal, Local Ghosts. But this one we included, we actually took out the word local and replaced it with import, because this is a very popular vampire in China, which we actually watch a lot here.
Its popularity comes from Indonesia and China's interest in ancient folklore and their affinity for all things mystical and supernatural. The company has also created environmentally friendly toys. This one was showcased in Taipei's Toy Festival this year, and it's made out of 100% recycled plastic, which was produced and sourced right here in Indonesia. The company has built a dedicated fan base in Indonesia and China, but hopes to expand to bigger markets in the future.
In a way that what we do is we are documenting history, we are doing social documentation. Our products mainly speaks about what's going on in Asia, what's going on in Indonesia, like strange things that are happening. If you see a lot of them, mostly are from news, something that actually happened, or folklore that's been told for many generations.
These figurines are more than just toys. They are a reflection of Asia's rich, diverse, and fascinating cultures. Sulkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
All right, then a quick run through commodity prices here for you. So spot platinum prices up about 11% so far in 2019. Positive news for Zimbabwe. It's got the second largest amount of platinum deposits in the continent after South Africa. In the 10 months to October, the country actually sold platinum worth about $1 billion, up 16% year on year. Mining at this point in time is Zimbabwe's largest source of foreign currency earnings. Is going to be extremely vital in the country's turnaround, especially after its economic crash. Here's what's coming up next. We'll explore why indoor farming is becoming quite popular in Nigeria. And we'll take you to a plastic island that takes recycling to a rather different level. All that and more is coming up shortly.
Images may appear to be identical, but looks can be deceiving. The difference is not always obvious. It has to be discovered. There are always different sides to a story. We put the focus on the details. To see more, to understand better. CGTN. See the difference.
The greatest journeys. The greatest sights. The greatest adventures.
Here in Cote, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival, and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN. See the difference.
Welcome back to the program. Nigeria is experiencing a rather interesting revolution in agriculture, thanks in part to the government's efforts to diversify its economy away from oil. More young people are taking to agriculture. New methods of farming are springing up across the country as it aims to be self-sufficient in food production. One young farmer is now driving a method of agriculture that's relatively new to Nigeria. CGTN's Deji Badmus has that story on Grassroots tonight.
From a distance, it looks like an abandoned tent. But right under this canopy, an unusual kind of farming is going on.
Hello, my name is PJ Okocha. Welcome to Smart Farm. So yes, what we have here is an 8 by 24 meter greenhouse, whereby we're doing a technology called aeroponics, as you can see here, and these are yam plantlets, and we're propagating yam here to ensure that we have a steady stream of production. So the yam here grows all year round. As you can see in this environment, it's an enclosed environment. And what that does is that mitigates against inclement weather.
It's an unusual kind of farming in a place like Nigeria, where yam is widely cultivated by tilling the soil and planted directly into it. But in this case, yam vines are literally grown in the air in a mist environment.
In a few months' time, these vines you see here will become canopies and extend out and so forth, which we will then carry out the vine cutting technology, cut from here, put into the nursery here for a month before taking to field. As you can see, it's about 10 boxes stretching down. And what that will ensure is that we will have about 800,000 vines in production. That 800,000 vines equates to 800,000 seeds or 800,000 tubers. And that's every 2 to 3 months. So essentially, in a calendar year, if you're going by 4 quarters in a year, what we are getting is about roughly between 2.5 to 3 million vines per annum.
When PS Nutraceuticals began operation in 2017, traditional farmers were skeptical of the idea. But through demonstration trials, they're gradually buying over the traditionalists to the tech side of farming.
What we do is that we give them seeds, which come from our aeroponic system, and we say, okay, plant this and compare it to your best variety, and let us know and come back to us with the results. And by and large, what they've seen is that what we've been giving them is far more effective. They're getting greater yields from the clean and healthy seeds that we're giving them. So with that, what they're saying is that, okay, we're ready for these seeds that PS Nutrac has. Please come and give it to us and provide for us as well. So not only will it empower farmers, but it also ensure that the cost of yam and so forth also drastically reduces as well.
Nigeria is the largest producer of yam in the world, but the wide adoption of innovative methods like aeroponics could see the country multiply its production capacity and become completely self-sufficient in yam, with a lot for export. Cote and his colleagues are also looking to taking their technology across the continent after having conquered the home front. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Abeokuta, Nigeria.
And finally, in Cote d'Ivoire, a French entrepreneur recycles the pile of plastic waste that floats in Abidjan's lagoon to build essentially what's a fun island. He hopes that this concept will spur others to find lucrative ways of reusing the capital city's growing pile of waste. Here's CGTN's Terry Wangari with that story.
The floating island in the middle of Abidjan's lagoon is a place to relax, enjoy a drink, swim in one of 2 pools, and even spend the night. It is touted by its owner, Eric Becker, as a paradise island and a perfect hideout for the weekend on the Facebook page. But what makes it extra special is that it's artificial, ecological, and floats atop 700,000 recycled bottles tightly packed in boxes. Becker had planned to start a business in Cote d'Ivoire, building a leisure catamaran in 2012. But what he found was miles of waste and plastic bottles along the lagoon's shores and decided to do his small part in trying to clean it up by building a tiny leisure village instead.
The floating island started to take shape in 2012 when I had a catamaran construction project. I was studying this, and people from the marina were all on the lagoon's edge, and so that's how I discovered the lagoon. Its advantages and its disadvantages, such as the pollution, and so little by little, my idea of building a travel boat turned into how to build a system. A village corner by using the pollution in the lagoon, namely the drums.
It took 6 years for Becker to collect discarded bottles, even sandals, and then test their strength and viability.
We pick up bottles and floating waste to build a little on the floating island, but if we wanted to get into the waste management, we will need to sort out the waste. For example, there are plastic bags that we do not use and can be used for something else. There is biodegradable waste that can be used to make fire or compost, for example, branches. So normally, you'd need to do more serious work than what we are doing, but all we can do is pick up part of the waste which we can recycle.
The island weighs around 200 tons and is equipped with solar panels for electricity. He also makes compost to grow some grass on the island. Water has to be pumped in from the land because the lagoon water is too polluted. For the moment, Becca says he has around 100 guests a week and most of his trade is at the weekends, and they seem to love the experience.
It is a beautiful project, and I think in future there will be several floating islands like this one, since the Lagoon Planning Department is very positive about these types of projects. So, we could have floating islands all over Cote d'Ivoire, and that would be great for us.
It's really innovative. Ecologically, it was something that was really worth thinking about. It's the place to be, sometimes even because it proves that nothing is wasted, nothing gained, everything can be preserved. So they did something really innovative, and I had to come and see it for myself up close.
Becca is keen to promote his system to encourage others to recycle more.
If we want to resolve the problem, then we're just a drop in the ocean. To resolve the problem, we would have to treat 100% of the waste instead of the 50% at the moment, and look at different sectors.
He says he will continue to look for new ways to improve this drop of paradise and make it 100% green. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Quick run through the currencies as we wrap up the program. Egypt's pound is still the best performing currency of the lot that we do track on this program. In fact, at today's levels, around 16.12, 16.11, it's actually 10% high against the American dollar. Kenyan shilling, on the other hand, pretty much back to where it started the year, just over 102, actually just under rather 102 to the dollar, 101.92 as a number we saw earlier. The East African nation has been selling a near $500 million 10-year note since the 6th of November. That sale wraps up tomorrow. It should be pretty interesting to see what price it arrives at, given the lifting of the rate caps. There's a lot more competition for available capital in the capital, Nairobi. That's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. As always, we'd like to hear your thoughts on the content you've seen in the program in the last hour. There are many ways to get your thoughts back to us. All of them are on your screens right now. I'm Ramah Nyang in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. Thank you for your company in the last hour. The World Today is up next from Washington, D.C.